NHL Puck Prop with Jingles and Coco, where one of us got their first NHL goal versus Brian Johnson after Matt Sundin, Brian McCabe, and Jeff O'Neill chased Oleg Kolzig, and the other one is, of course, me. I'm your co-host, Josh Ingles, betting analyst for Covers, and I am joined by 14-year NHL vet and NHL analyst Carlo Colaiacovo. What is up, Coco?
What's up, man? See, I tried to score goals in the NHL. You're trying to score wins, betting props.
Yeah, the stories aren't
That's
quite as
why we're
good,
a perfect
though.
match.
Well, we're starting off with another match. As we know, the Leafs better than most, I would think. Toronto at Nashville. Toronto minus 120, visiting favorites, total of just at 6. And we are jumping on what we think is a mispriced line here. Austin Matthews, anytime goal at plus 120, and this is found at Bet365. Matthews comes back after suspension. The team is riding a hot young goaltender in Erik Källgren, who proved me wrong last game. I thought he wouldn't be able to go 2 in a row, but he certainly has. We've seen Sheldon Keefe talk great things about Källgren and his patience and his emotional stability as a young guy. And they'll face a Nashville team. They beat 3-0 earlier in the season, and Nashville's just 8-8 straight up since February 1st. Was Matthews' absence in Coco, was it possibly a good thing for this club who was so reliant on him to score? And does he slot right back into his dominating role tonight?
Well, absolutely. He slides right back in. He slides right back in, fired up, because the reason why he got suspended, okay, he crossed the line a little bit, but you're seeing an edge to Austin Matthews' game right now. This guy is playing pissed off. He's playing with emotion. And I think with this suspension, he's adding a little bit more juice to that fire. So I anticipate him coming back with a vengeance tonight. Matthews and Bunting help continue to lead the way with Tavares sliding in his spot. And look, when you play without your best player, it's a time of the season where you learn a lot about your team. And I think what we've learned a lot about this Maple Leafs team, especially over this last 2 games, and I know it's only a short sample size, is they're a really good team if they get saves. Erik Källgren comes in and people are crowning him as the savior in Toronto. I think it's still early to crown him that, but you got to love what he's been able to do. He's come in, he's created stability in net, and he's allowed the team to play so confident in front of them because they can get saves. And the only thing I fear right now with Källgren is I hope this is a guy that ends up being somewhat of the real deal, because he stepped into this scenario already in his career as early as last year, where in Sweden he stepped in for the starting goaltender and led the Swedish team that he played for to a championship. Can it happen here? Remains to be seen, but we've seen stories like that happen. But what I'm getting to is that he's walking into a really, really electric environment in Nashville, one of the best places to play when you talk about atmospheres. It's honky tonk town. The place is going to be loud. It's going to be raucous. At times, as we've seen Nashville in playoffs, they can get onto the goalie if he's really, really hot. So I'm wondering how he handles that type of pressure, which means we could see somewhat of a lot of goals scored in this game. And if that's the case, best scorer in the game with 45 goals at plus money, how can you pass that up?
Yeah, awesome. I think this one's protected on both sides. If the Leafs play the same game they played against Dallas and Carolina, we still like this. But if Källgren falters, his plus 120 anytime goal score will be looking even better. Marner is playing the best hockey of the season, I think. Showed what he can do. And the Predators take the most penalties in hockey, which is bad news when facing the Leafs' number 1 power play. This is a really good angle. The power play prop market isn't open. We were looking at it, but we still think that this team can take advantage of maybe the least disciplined, or for sure the least disciplined team in hockey. Is this something Sheldon Keefe will be working on in game plan for this matchup, as the Leafs have the number 1 power play and used it successfully in the last matchup?
I don't think it's a conversation that is discussed pregame, because if anything, you got a guy like Michael Bunting who leads the league in drawn penalties. So you don't need to have a conversation with him and say, hey, make sure you're doing your job and better tonight. He knows what he needs to do. If anything, Sheldon Keefe's message is going to be continuing to push this team to play within their structure, protect their young goaltender, focus on defensive structure that leads into offensive chances. We've seen it in the last 2 games. When this team gets saves and they play with a defensive mentality, they're good enough to create chances off the rush. you don't need to tell an offensively talented group like the Maple Leafs how they need to play. They've got to do what they need to do and generate their own momentum in the game. How do you do that? You try to play as much as you can in the offensive zone, but you also try to create fear in the other team so that they're making, or at least they're understanding the high risk plays that they might not need to make, which will do one of two things: either cause offensive zone opportunities or force them to create penalties or force them to take penalties.
Exactly. And the really cool thing about this whole Shalgren thing that no one's kind of talking about is this could be saving the team making one move at the deadline,
Right.
because they probably needed it if he came up and faltered. And the Lyubushkin pairing with Riley has also helped the team,
Love it.
who I thought was probably 2 trades away from making some noise in the Eastern
Right.
Conference.
And they probably still are. You don't want to let 2 games overshadow what you've been game planning up until this point, because I think it's pretty safe to say, like, as good as they've looked and played over these last 2 games, because of the goaltending that they're getting and because of the way their defense is playing with the new way it's restructured with the pairings, you can't lose focus on the weaknesses of your team. I would still believe they probably got to go out and add at least 1, maybe 2 depth defensemen, even if it's not an impact guy. I'm the biggest fan of Lyubushkin. I've been barking up that tree for over a month, saying that they need to pair him with Riley because he can create that stable, presence for him back there. Not only just because he's steady with the puck, but he's physical. He's physical, and he allows Morgan Riley. And when you think about it, he allows Morgan Riley to play his game. But
What's he, 15 hits over the last 2 games?
It's incredible. But if you're a teammate of his, and especially on defense, you're looking at that and saying, all right, if this guy's going to go out there and be physical, there's no reason why I can't be. It's contagious. And I think they've done a good job of balancing out their defense with their second pair of Brody and Hall that have looked really stable. But even their third pair that has been Liljegren and Sandin, I think that's where they need to be properly suited. I think we're going to see Dermott slot in for Liljegren today, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. At the end of the day, we know this Maple Leafs team is talented. We know this Nashville team likes to give up goals. You got to like your chances here with Matthews returning to the lineup.
Yeah, and like I said, we'd probably play this down to -110. Matthews actually had the game winner on the power play in the last meeting in 3-0 win, crossing pass from Nylander that he buried short side on Saros. And Saros hasn't been playing fantastically either. He's allowed 5 goals in 2 of his last 3 starts, including that 5-goal performance versus the Flyers. And Matthews has been practicing during his suspension, so it's not like we're going to be talking about rust.
I tell you what, I've been in that situation, obviously not being suspended, but healthy scratched. I hated the bag skates. Hated the bag skates because you got to keep up your conditioning, right, for the guys that are playing. So I would imagine Matthews feels the same way. And this guy's a competitor, man. He just wants to go out and play games, score goals, and help win hockey games for his team.
Yeah, and most of the time, which is weird, most of the time the best player props, like Matthews' goal props, which are highly public and the overs are quite square plays, they're the most efficient lines, but not this +120 at Bet365, which is why we're also jumping on it.
Right.
This is as low as -130 in other books. And like I said, we play this down to -110. Switching gears over here, looking for more goals. Ottawa at Montreal. Montreal -140 favorites. Not sure I'd be jumping on the Habs at -140, but total of 6. And Cole Caulfield, anytime goal scorer, +180.
Wow.
Also at Bet365. Is another one that just jumps out. Since Marty St. Louis took over the reins of the Canadian bench duties, Cole Caulfield is averaging 1.31 points per game and has 11 goals over 16 games. Coco, you've played under Pat Quinn, Paul Maurice, Andy Murray, to name a few coaches. I'm not so sure that those guys were out there giving you a confidence boost every night. But what is Marty St. Louis doing with this young core, and what is he doing to unlock this talent from Caulfield and Suzuki, who struggled under Ducharme?
Well, what he's doing is truly amazing, because as a guy that is an analyst on Montreal Canadian games, it is amazing to see the transformation with these 2 players who were very close to being written off within the team, within the fans, within the organization, because they just weren't meeting their level of production. But you gotta love what Marty St. Louis has been done with this team, and it's not about what he's done; it's a lot about what he hasn't done. He hasn't focused on systems with these guys and completely brainwashed them to be, system sort of box players. He's focused on concept with these guys, which is play with more instincts, trust your skills, create muscle memory, especially with the way you translate practice into a game. And it's amazing how much these two players have completely transformed. Nick Suzuki looks like the 20, 25 goal scorer. Cole Caulfield is potentially a late bloomer here for the Calder race. Since February 26th, the day Marty St. Louis took over, he leads all rookies in goals and points with 21 points and 11 goals in 16 games. He has 21 games left, and he's only 8 back of Michael Bunting for the scoring lead. Remember how people writ this guy off at the beginning of the year? This guy going into the season was the favorite for the Calder Trophy. And it just makes me believe that Dominic Ducharme robbed this guy of the Calder Trophy because he's putting up incredible numbers, playing at an incredible level right now. And he's doing it because he's playing it with so much confidence. And as a coach, sometimes it's less about, the X's and O's and just more about the message. And the message right now from Marty St. Louis since he took over is positive reinforcement. And you can see the dividends he's paying right now. He's got 3 goals in his last 3 games. He's getting incredible offensive zone time. He's the guy, the trigger man on the power play. Plus 180, man. There's tremendous value there right now on Cole Caulfield, especially who they're playing too. They're playing the Ottawa Senators, who are coming in off of a back-to-back. I think they're not going to play one of their better players, Nick Paul. They've got a lot of trade rumors out there with some of their guys. One of their best goalies, Forsberg, who's been on a run lately, probably won't play tonight. So there's a lot of advantages pointing to Caulfield hitting the scoreboard or score sheet again tonight.
Yeah, I'm just looking at obviously Caulfield's still on his entry-level contract, $880,000 right now. They gave Suzuki almost $8 million. Yeah, that's going to be a tricky one. He's RFA,
especially coming out of the way he played in the playoffs last year, right?
Yeah.
But Dominic Ducharme was just sucking the life right out of this team, and it's it really makes you believe how much different this season could have gone. Obviously you can't control the health and the off ice situations that Carey Price has been dealing with. You lose Shea Weber, Joel Edmondson doesn't play for most of the year. Jonathan Drouin is hurt. Gallagher is hurt. Anderson was hurt. Like, this team has gone through crazy scenarios. Now they're going through somewhat of a rebuild, reshift. They just traded away Sherratt. But the 2 guys that are going to help lead this team into the future are Caulfield and Suzuki.
Yeah, and as the great Mark Wahlberg said, I'm a peacock, boss. You got to let me strut. And that's
let me fly.
Oh, you got to let me fly. Is that what he says?
I love it. Oh, yeah, dude. Peacock and Pigeon, like we have a segment on our show called Peacock versus Pigeon, where we basically give a description for who it is that we're talking about. Are they peacock or are they pigeons?
Yeah, he's a peacock right now. That's
peacock for sure. Let him fly, baby.
The Canadians, like you said, they'll also get a ton of help. They're not. Ottawa's a sneaky good defensive team, and a lot of that came down to Anton Forsberg, who's been playing exceptionally, as you mentioned, but he won't play. And when the Sens turn to Gustafsson, who has been a bit of a sieve, things can get ugly, and that's why you see high game totals for Senator games. Gustafsson's second worst goals against since November 22nd. So we're not talking a short period of time here. Right. 4.37 goals against and an .862 save percentage. He's allowed 4 or more goals in 4 of his last 6 starts. Is St. Louis massaging Caulfield's confidence ahead of a great matchup on paper in a possible point night for the Habs?
I think you gotta like this situation right now that presents itself for Montreal for 2 reasons. One, like you'd mentioned, the goaltender, and 2, no Thomas Chabot. The minute munching horse back on the blue line for the Ottawa Senators is not going to be there. So you're going to have sort of a patchwork type of defense. And I've noticed a change in Montreal's energy since returning to a full Bell Center crowd, which is probably going to be what you see tonight too on Saturday night, back in front of the crowd. Look, it's been one of those write-off type of years for Montreal, but the fans there are really looking forward to how this season finishes for this group. They're looking forward to the draft to see what position they can get, potentially what player they can help with the rebuild or retool, whatever direction they want to take with this team. So there's going to be energy in the building, and especially if Cole Caulfield is out there playing and scoring, it's going to blow the roof off in Montreal. And I tell you what, one of the funnest places I enjoyed playing in my career, obviously Toronto, Montreal games in Montreal, but Montreal as a whole, that place gets electric and gets loud, especially when the team is winning and playing good.
Did they try to say your name with a French accent?
Carlo, Colaiacovo.
Yeah, it's always funny when guys like Riley Smith have to get their name announced at the Bell Center.
Right.
Yeah. Like you said, Thomas Chabot out, massive blow for Ottawa. And another big thing for the Habs, they've been drawing penalties like crazy. With good play comes guys who can't keep up with you, especially these young guys, and they're drawing penalties. They're not like McDavid and Matthews, who apparently never get calls, but they're drawing a ton. 38, they've drawn 38 penalties over their last 8 games. That is a huge number. Ottawa played last night. We know good teams don't play consistently well. Caulfield has 4 goals over his last 3 games, at least 3 shots in 10 straight games. So that knows that he's consistently getting things on net. And he isn't even the shortest odds on the board, which is incredible. Josh Norris, plus 165. Josh Anderson, plus 160. Brady Tkachuk, plus 175. Should not be ahead of him. Cole Caulfield, anytime goal scorer, plus 180 at Bet365. 365. We love it. Jumping over, switching gears, Calgary at Vancouver. This is an odd one. We've been following Vancouver and this Calgary team pretty extensively over the last 2 weeks. Vancouver only plus 120. Calgary on the back end to a back-to-back. Total of 6. I'm jumping on Lindholm over 2.5 shots, minus 125. The Flames were shut out last night by Buffalo, which should have Daryl Sutter firing the troops up tonight versus a Vancouver team who also embarrassed Calgary the last time they played a month ago, 7-1. What does a road trip feel like from Calgary to Vancouver after getting blanked by the Sabres and then heading into a matchup versus a team that embarrassed you in the last meeting?
Well, there's definitely the feel of a revenge game here in this matchup. And especially if you go back to last night's game against Buffalo that Calgary lost at home, it almost you almost have the sense that this was a look-ahead game for Calgary, where they were more focused on getting revenge against Vancouver and lost track of, bringing their A game to yesterday's matchup against Buffalo, which, again, 0-0 going into overtime, and Buffalo squeaks out an overtime win, 1-0 on the road, who, by the way, got spanked, I believe it was 7-2 the night before in Edmonton. So this is hockey for you. This is the crazy way things happen. And more surprisingly, that Calgary lost a home game last night, because going into that game
with Markstrom in net,
16 games, they were 14-1-1 at home. And going into last night's game too, they're entering a stretch of playing 8 out of their next 9 at home as well too. So this is their one road game of the next 9-game stretch. So, you can go to Vancouver too. The 2 nights ago between them and Detroit, Vancouver's coming off of a 1-0 loss too against the Detroit team that was giving up a ton of goals. Who would have thought that? We were all over the over in points being scored in that game in JT Miller, but 79 shots were taken in that game. We only saw 1 goal between both teams. Doesn't make any sense, which means I have a feeling tonight might be one of those games. Daryl Sutter always gets his teams ramped up, prepared, especially coming off of a loss. So Lindholm, one of their best players, one of their hottest players, one of their best point producers in this game, you got to think they're going to be leaning towards him to help generate the offense. And when you're looking at 2.5 shots, I think you said he's averaging 4 shots a game over this last stretch?
Yeah, just under. He's getting quite a few shots on that. And as we were talking before, the trio, him, Tkachuk, and Gaudreau, they're not really jumping out. No one's really taken the reins in the goal department over the last 2 games. So I really like that. Before the game in Buffalo, and they've been firing pucks on net before that game in Buffalo, they had 129 shots on net over their previous 3 games before losing to Buffalo 1-0, which is a massive number. And they'll face a Vancouver team who's given up at least 34 shots in 4 of their last 6. We're also talking about 2 of the best offenses over the last 30, 40 days. So we could see lots of goals here going back and forth. Could Sutter's message be short and simple? You've been blanked 2 games out of your last 4. Just get shots on net tonight in Vancouver.
That's a great point, Josh. You're absolutely right. The message would be knowing that Demko is one of those guys that is the backbone of this Vancouver team, because they need to rely on him on most nights to get them wins, because he's just such a workhorse back there, and he makes a ton of saves for them to do so. So I'd imagine at least the game plan or the coaching strategy going into this game would be Daryl Sutter saying, guys, you want to have success against this guy? You got to get pucks towards the net. Get in his face, put the pucks in the crease, bang away shots, bang away rebounds, because if you create a higher workload for this guy, chances are you're going to find, more chances than not to put the puck in the net. And, with the way this top line has been playing all year, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't have a positive reaction to that message and help drive the offense for this team.
Yeah, Lindholm, 6 shots in the last meeting, second on the team in shots over the last 12 games, tied for the team lead in goals over the last 7 games. He's had at least 2 shots in 9 straight, and is paying the best price of the top line for over 2.5 shots at -125. This game could be another shootout, which could keep this number 1 scoring line for Sutter out on the ice, as Dan Vladar will probably draw the start with Markstrom playing last night.
Darth Vader.
It's Vladar.
I know. I'm just saying Darth Vader instead of Darth Vader. Darth Vader.
Yeah, he hasn't been Markstrom territory, that's for sure.
Right.
And we know with Demko, he can either be that guy who just shuts the door, or he can give up 4 goals too. And come off against a pissed off Daryl Sutter team, there's probably some grind in the Flames' game tonight. So goals equals shots. Lindholm's been getting goals. Gaudreau has just 1 goal in his last 4 games. Tkachuk has 1 over his last 7. So neither is really lighting the lamp. So usually with that line, I like to say whoever's hot, they're feeding them, but nobody is. So shots, everybody will be taking shots. Lindholm over 2.5 shots, -125. That's another one we like. There's 3 in the can for us. And that will do it for us on Covers as Pucks Props. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Let us know what you think in the comments. He's Coco. I'm Jingles. This is Covers. Lead us out, Coco.
May the winners be yours. Bang.